Welcome to this week's episode of Trusted Tech Talks podcast. I'm your host, Tom Grace, and I'll be joined this week by Rob Fox, Head of Software Engineering at Findel Education, to discuss his journey into technology and leadership and his key learning points along the way. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's Trusted Tech Talks. Today we're recording live from Findel Education. I'm joined by Rob Fox, who's Head of Technology here. So thanks for having us, Rob.
Oh, no worries.
So I guess firstly, if you just want to give us a bit of a sort of intro to who you are and what work that you do here.
Yeah. So as you say, I'm Rob Fox, Head of Software Engineering here. I've been with the business now 15 months. And my background comes from, I've been a software developer really for the last 15 years. Just from being a software developer, worked up to be a team lead and then into management. And so then I joined the business, say 15 months ago to stay ahead, the digital transformation in the business. There's been we'll touch on it shortly as well, but there's been a lot of investment in technology here and to help grow out the teams and build the next platforms for Findel.
Great. And what was it that first got you into tech, Rob?
So, it'd be going back to school days, I think. Playing games. I don't probably play much games now, but back in the day I probably played quite a few games. And the one thing you always want to do is cheat. So I probably got into hacking probably the games to work out how to cheat. And that kind of gave me insight of what the power of computers probably could do and how you can manipulate them and how you can program them to do certain things. So that whet my appetite. I was at school. I wanted to do software engineering as a GCSE, wasn't able to do it. Though my other friends at other schools could do, and so I was a little bit jealous. So I looked for a college really who were doing A-levels at computing. So I got into it there, so my passion from being in games, got my first experience of how to do something at A-levels, and I remember the teacher, one of my teachers there, had programmed the security platform that we all logged in and out. So, and that just really got my appetite of like what he could do, and it just started from there. Really, that's where I could really started to knuckle down and actually learn more and more about software engineering, doing websites for myself on the side and a few of my friends. And just took it from there.
Yeah, okay, great. So did you study, what was it, at university?
Yeah, so I left, after leaving college, I went to university to study software engineering. And I think at that time we studied Java and C++ at university there. Strange, because since I've left, I've not really touched those languages. But I guess it gives you the foundations to really get going. And so after leaving university, I was just looking for the first role, really.
No, okay. And what was the first role that you went into?
So, strange again. So I left university, and I think the one thing I really wanted to do was get a role, regardless of what it was. I wanted to get a role in technology to get started. And I went to a company called Yearsley's, which is a cold storage and distribution company. The language that they were building on an I-series, which is a really, I guess, AS400 it might be known as, and the programming language, I think, was RPGLE, and it was a language no one had ever heard of, and to be honest, it wasn't something I wanted to program in. Not many people would have heard it. People listening to this probably won't have heard of it, but it was the first step in the door. And it's like an IBM machine, or a mainframe machine. So I got the opportunity to start there. Yearsley's then was starting to look at revamping how to do tracking of their vehicles when they're out on the road. And they wanted to be able to map this onto Google Maps, I think it was at the time. So they wanted to start to look at new technologies. So this is where from using the AS400, I was, what else can we use? So then I started to get into ASP.NET and JavaScript pages, of then how to work with the browser and trying to map the two from the modern day technologies at the time of web development into the AS400, and that then actually probably put me on the path of where I started to go down then to more web development and application development. So that was just really the starting point for me there, and I think it was a good opportunity. So it probably wasn't the thing that I really wanted to start with, but it got my foot on the ladder really to really get going, and I just grasped that chance of doing that. And the funny thing is, I always do look back because it's a language of not many people know it. There'll be a rainy day someday if people need crying out for that sort of developers. I'm sure I could go back to that and put my hand to it at some point in the past if that ever came to it. So.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've never heard of it. Yeah. I don't recruit too many of those guys. So,
I think it would be a specialist skill these days. Unfortunately, I don't think many, say, younger developers coming through would be interested in doing that. It's probably your black and green screen. There's no visuals to it. It was very, very basic, but powerful at the same time of what it can do. But it's not the pretty things that most developers would want to go to.
Cool. And then so it was more moved into the Microsoft stack, ASP.NET.
Yeah, that's right. So I left there, and the first thing I looked for then was getting more web development, and I went to a digital agency. We started building platforms and websites for various different smaller companies, and from being ASP, I think I was on. I'm trying to think of the technology. So I think it was ASP, then it went to ASP.NET. So then I moved from ASP to ASP.NET, and I think that was done in VB at the time. And then while I was there, we started transitioning to C#. It's probably the first experience of actually programming in C# rather than VB. And yeah, so I just got the experience of web development and C# there. Some coding practices, probably not the greatest, and I think at digital agency it was very fast paced. It's deliver what you can as fast as you can. But it kind of got me onto the right tech stack of where I really want to be, and that was great. I stayed there for some time, but then I moved to another company in Manchester, which was Peninsula Business Services. And Peninsula was probably a step up for me, because it was, rather than working for a small digital agency, I was working for a probably bigger organisation, and it exposed to me probably rather than single websites, more enterprise applications, different systems, how systems talk to each other. And so it was the big step up really for me there. We had quite a few good developers there, and I remember late rooms were upstairs when the late rooms at the time were doing really well, and we used to swap developers between the two companies. And I got exposure to, I guess, different people, different experiences, learnt a lot, and best practices in solid principles, architecture patterns, and that was where it started to open up to me there. And I'd probably say that was probably where my career really probably kick-started in terms of putting me on the journey that I really went on. I left there, and when I left there, I decided actually to go contracting. So I handed my notice in to go contracting, and I got a first opportunity at a company called DRL Limited. And not many people know who DRL are, but that turned into AO World, as they are now. So I got a contract at DRL, and I really enjoyed what I was doing there. Nobody knew DRL. It was a small, unknown company at the time, and we had a web platform. And then there was a great team. It was a small team at the time. I think the team that I joined, there was maybe about 5 or 6 developers in there, and we built everything. And so being at a small company at the time we got involved from the order being placed on the website all the way through to the ordering process, the payments, shipping it into the warehouse, and you got involved with all the systems. So it was like an opportunity. When you're at a small company, you do get exposure to quite a lot of things, and it was great to be there. So I was there for 6 months, and then it was AO didn't want contractors anymore, so it was either leave or become permanent. And I'd only been as my first role as a contractor, so didn't know what to do, but I really enjoyed what I was doing there, so I decided to I'm going to stay as permanent. I then went on that journey from DRL turning into AO World, and I think that was the best thing ever, really. Just being at a company that's growing so fast and moving into like the international territory opened up just so many opportunities to learn multiple different systems, architecture, distributed systems, how to scale platforms. There were challenges what we had along the way and how you had to come over those. And I'd say AO had a great bunch of people working there, which I always now I look back, I always go, if I could bring a team back together again, I'd probably say the team at AO, because just how collaborative people were and how everybody worked together. I always wanted to learn best practices, good management there who always encouraged us to do the right thing. It was a great place to be. And so, yeah, I say AO was one of the places where I look back from a growth perspective. I probably grew up there, and technically, leadership-wise, I think I took my first role there leading the team. AO was a great place.
Yeah, and it certainly says a lot if, as a contractor, you didn't take the next contract and decided to stay on a perm basis. Yeah,
and it was the best thing I did, because I think the exposure that you get from growing a business where, especially at AO World, they went massive, and I guess AO was probably quite recognised as a good development area to be. You just learn. You learn a lot. And it's funny, because I think one thing I'll sometimes say, experience helps, and actually seeing how different companies work. And so contracting, at the time I did want to leave to see how various different companies work. And you look at in one company, they do something great, and then some things probably poorer, and then you go in somewhere else and you'll see the total opposite, and it's good to just get that experience. But I felt like I got that at AO, because the path that we went on and the learnings that we had to do to grow quite fast, it was just a good experience to kind of build myself up.
And so, what brought you to Findel then? What attracted you?
I'd left after leaving AO. I'd done a few more other bits and pieces, and thought I did leave AO and had my own business for some time. I then decided did that for 2 years. I had that with a friend of mine, and we probably did 2 years, and then we both had different ideas of where we wanted to go, so we went down our different paths. And I got back into permanent, and I was into management by then as well. So I'd had a few extra roles in management, team leaders. I then went to the previous company before this, which was a tech business called Mission Labs. And again, this is probably another area of my career where I look back into have really enjoyed it, because from AO where I guess we did best practices, moving into Mission Labs, it was a startup, it was a tech business. It was very fast paced. We were looked at everything. It was any challenge could be overcome. We were very much in the cloud. It developed me more technically in terms of what cloud offering we can work with, and so that was really great. And I was there for probably 2 years. Moving on from there, it was what's the next thing I could do, and I was probably looking for somewhere which was similar to DRL AO, somewhere where there was a small team, but the business had big plans in terms of tech and what we can kind of and growing the team out. And Findel probably fit the bill there. Findel hadn't had anybody in my position for some time before I joined, and they achieved the website what they'd had, because traditionally Findel was an offline business providing catalogues to school. And there's a big transformation in terms of actually pushing that all online now. I think 4 years ago, the business was probably about 90% of its sales were offline and 10% online. And CIO had done a great job bringing in a team here to kind of push that further, more digital and more online. So I think when I joined, it was about 80% online and 20% offline. But it was the big plan is to get it fully online. And so it was a good challenge to be part of. There was a small team at the time when I joined, probably about 7 developers, and there was a big investment in technology to double that team. And not just technically, it was bringing in the softer skills as well, the BAs, the PMs, with UX, DevOps, and it's grown the whole team. And it was just a good opportunity really to kind of help out in that area. It's a retail business, so a lot of my background's retail. It was a good opportunity to help stay ahead and grow the team out in terms of where it plans to head to. So it's a challenge. It's not necessarily always straightforward. There's different challenges from technical to personnel to kind of everything that comes in within management. But it's a nice challenge to have, and I enjoy the progression that we make week after week, month after month, and it's that's really I could see that. CIO told me the journey, and I bought into it.
Yeah, it must be really exciting to join a project at that stage, very early, and have the kind of autonomy, I guess, or the almost a blank slate to say how we're going to go about this?
Yeah, I think the one thing I always like to do is be able to put my stamp on things, and it's one of the things I'll always speak to when I recruit to developers and anybody else is when you're at a smaller company, you've got the opportunity to put your own stamp on things. Sometimes if you join a bigger organisation, they can be in a way stuck in the ways of doing things and they're harder to change. Not that that's a bad thing, but joining a smaller company, it allows people to make their mark, and a lot of developers like that. They want a little bit more of greenfield, a little bit more flexibility, and we do have some systems that we continue to work on. It's not all greenfield, but there's so much opportunity to people put their stamp on things and make a big impression in terms of their career and help us learn and just grow together.
And what did the sort of state of the tech landscape look like when you joined to what it is now, and where do you plan to take it?
Yeah. So when I joined, we had probably 2 platforms that we built internally, and they are probably .NET framework on one of them on the platforms, and then the other one is .NET Core with a web API and a React front end. And we've not changed probably dramatically in the last year. What we've started to do is, my previous role, I've worked a lot more in cloud and serverless, and we've started to try and touch into that a little bit more, and looking at what the opportunities are within and using the power of the cloud a little bit. So we've started to go on a bit of a roadmap, a pathway with that. We've then looked at some of our other platforms. We're hosting Kubernetes in the cloud. We've started to simplify some of that. We're not a big team, so we're going to simplify some of our way we host some of our sites and empower really the developers to own a bit more of the pipeline. So traditionally, I'd probably say that there was always the developers and then there was the DevOps, and the DevOps would do the deployment. And I particularly don't always like that. And places where I've always been, it's the developers should be involved in the full pipeline. So they build it, they deploy it, and then they own it in live. And it's just getting that problem mentality shift in terms of allowing to empower the developers to own the full start to finish. So we're trying to change that journey. We're trying to, I guess, upscale into the cloud, serverless, and seeing what the opportunities are there. And then we've got new projects where we can kind of start to put some of these ideas more into shape. So I'll touch on some of the projects shortly. But there's a few areas where we're starting to kind of really implement this. And then some of our legacy applications, which we do work with, I guess our e-commerce platform, it's a platform that we can't change overnight. There's journeys which there's a journey there to be had, and it's just probably chipping away at that where we can do, looking at more microservice approach to how do you break apart a monolith application into more microservices, and so we don't have to replace the full system overnight. It's a journey to go on, but how do we start to look at the different domains, pulling the domains out, what microservices can we build around them, and slowly over time we'll start to have more independent services rather than bigger monolithic applications. So there's a big journey, there's a whole picture to kind of address, and I wish it could be done overnight. It's not, it is a journey, and I think we're all on board on that journey.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, plenty of exciting stuff to get involved in then. So can you tell us a bit about some of the projects you've got ongoing?
Yeah, sure. So we've got 4 teams now. So we originally had 1, but we've been big investments. So we've got four teams. We're all working on something slightly different. One of the teams, so we've got 4 teams actually, and we have a 5th team, which is an external team to help us move faster in one of the projects. So the new Greenfield project is something totally new for the business. So we're an educational goods supplier and sell physical goods, and the new project is more of a digital offering. It's more so content that we're going to be selling, and so they'll have like a digital hub. That's going to be a total greenfield platform which is being built. Similar technologies, .NET Core, React, front end, it's Next.js with React, and we're trying to build that in a more microservice way. It is going to be hosting a lot of content, so videos, PDFs, documents, be able to stream videos so we can kind of host lessons and things like that. So that's one platform that we've started to build. And then we have a lot of work on our e-commerce platform. So we've got 3 teams set up around that. And as I mentioned, it's how do we break apart that application into more microservices. So there's a pathway for doing that. But then also why enriching the platform at the same time. So we've got initiatives in the business to revamp the My Account area in there and make that more singing and dancing, I'd probably say. And so that's new features and a different tech stack we're going to look at changing. And then Findel is more of a B2B business, but we do have multiple brands, and one of them brands is Davies Sports, and that's really more B2C. Our e-commerce platform serves all our brands, and it's all deployed individually for each brand. But because we've always been B2B, a lot of the feature set has always been related to B2B businesses. And we need to probably make that a bit more consumer friendly. So we're looking at trying to put features into the site to make it a bit more B2C. That could be additional payment methods. It's having a guest checkout. We currently don't have a guest checkout, so we need to implement a guest checkout. It's revamping our process of how you sign up to be a member of our sites. At the moment in time, it is very driven from a B2B world. We've got all our prices on the current site display in expat, but as consumers we like to probably see it as including that. So there's a whole host of things there. So we've got a big roadmap there. So in terms of our roadmap, at the moment it's probably about 3 years long of work that we've kind of got planned out, and it's the reason why we've grown the team so much. But even with growing the team, the roadmap's probably still nearly 3 years long. The more we grow the teams, the more ideas the business gets, and there's just an endless amount of work to kind of work through there. So that's what we've currently got on at the moment in time, but there is endless possibilities at the moment.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, no, it certainly sounds like a great opportunity to join the team.
Yeah.
I think we've probably come into to the end, really. Thanks for giving us so much insight into the business and what's going on at the moment. I guess finally, just a question which could be useful to anyone listening. What advice would you give to a developer starting their journey now?
I think the best advice is just get stuck straight in. I think if I look at my career, I've kind of worked at different businesses doing different things, and I think all that has just built my experience up. So I don't think there's anything wrong you can kind of really do. I'd say just get stuck in. I'd say don't be afraid for asking questions. Everyone always says that there's no silly questions, so just ask whatever. And the majority of the time, there's someone in that room always probably wanting to ask that same question and never did. And then the other thing I'd probably say, get stuck into events, go into events, maybe get into Manchester and get to different events there and meet different people, because one thing which your business will give you, they'll give you the experience of that business and that business only. I think the only way to probably expose yourself into more is to get out into these different events, really, and start to kind of see how other companies are working and different people are there, and just start to mix in them circles. I think that's the best way to probably get the experience. And I'd say the best developers haven't always done everything themselves. It's just knowing how to find information for a problem when you need it, and then once you know how to find that information, you can go and do a bit more digging, and you've got that problem. So just being aware of the Manchester's event-based places in Manchester, you get to learn just concepts and new ideas, and it just builds that experience that you probably always want. And if you ever come across a problem, you'll know, I've heard about that somewhere else, I can go and find more information, I can ask that person again. And I think just building that connection, I think really will help people get going in their careers. So, but regardless of whatever option, which direction they go down, I wouldn't worry about it, because there is, I think we're quite looking in tech where there's a lot of opportunities. Just learn as much as you can do and just do your best.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Trusted Tech Talks podcast with me, Tom Grace, and your guest speaker, Rob Fox, Head of Software Engineering at Findel Education. If you have any follow-up questions for Rob about his journey or career opportunities at Findel Education, don't hesitate to get in touch via LinkedIn or email. Finally, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Trusted Tech Talks on our social channels so you never miss a future episode.